Hello, welcome everyone. Are we ready to go? Hi. Hello, you are here for Through a Different Lens, where we'll be thinking about immersive experiences and the opportunity for the environmental sector. My name is Katie Keeler, and I'm here just to introduce these two brilliant speakers and to then help us have a discussion and ask questions of them. Savita asked me here, I think because I work for an organisation called Kaleider. We're a production studio based in Exeter. We make cool stuff with meaning for people to experience around the globe. And we play on the edges of installation, live performance and digital, so I'm very much from an arts and culture background and feel a bit out of my depth with you brilliant people. Our aim is to bring people together, to respond creatively to some of the world's greatest challenges. I just want to show you a couple of pictures of the work. This is a show called The Money. This photograph is from Sydney Opera House back in September. And The Money is a show game. As an audience member, you can buy a ticket as a player or as a silent witness. If you're a player, you sit around this middle table. If you're a silent witness, you can only watch, you can't speak. The players have 1 hour to decide how to spend a pot of real money. It's a really exciting game. Of course, it's not really about money, it's about democracy and decision-making, and it tours all over the world all the time. This is a lovely project called Listening Trees. When you sit on a bench, you are connected to a stranger on another bench somewhere else in the world. I think I'm clicking it too quickly. This is called Pig, and as you can see, it's a large transparent pig. There are slots in the top for you to put money in, and there are bolts all the way around the edge of the pig for you to lift the top off the pig. So anyone can put money in it, and this neon sign in the middle, it says, "This is a community fund. You can contribute to it if you like. When you've agreed how to spend the money, you can open me and spend it. #ThePig." People put money in, people take money out. I'm just going to leave that one with you. And then this is a VR experience, actually. It's a new piece, and we've just reworked it. It's 7 members of the public putting VR goggles on, and they are taken through a really beautiful starscape kind of experience. And as they move through the experience, they are moving in a particular way. So we have coded it so that from the outside it can look like dance. So they may all turn at the same time, all sweep their arm at the same time. Quite a new project. And then this is a project we're doing with the universities of Falmouth, Plymouth, Bath and UWE, and with Watershed. Kaleider and Watershed are kind of producing it. And we have just recruited a whole bunch of amazing fellows and this year to look at the actual theme of immersion. And these fellows go through a deep thinking phase and then a sharing phase, and then come out and we start making prototypes. And that's quite a useful partnership that maybe someone might want to talk to me about. And finally, this is our building, because as I said, we're in Exeter. We don't just make art, we bring people together, so we have academics and scientists. In Exeter, of course, we've got the Met Office, and we've got some of the world's leading climate scientists at the university. So we join forces with these people and work from this space. We commission work and commission specific things, so quite often on a kind of climate change topic. You can speak to me about that after. So that's why I've been invited here today, I think, because... and now I'm going to introduce the speakers. So first of all, on my left here is Catherine Allen. And Catherine is a VR pioneer and a director of a company called Limina Immersive. So Catherine's company, Limina, is a leading immersive media, curation, events and consultancy company specializing in creative AR and VR. And then next up, we've got Tom August. Tom is an ecologist and a programmer. So amongst many, many things, he is using virtual reality and computer games to talk about our changing world. So I'm going to pass over to them, then we'll have time for some questions and some discussion, and I'll keep us to time. We've got till 4:20.
Hello everybody, thank you so much for having me here and for letting me talk about virtual reality to you. And I took the title through a different lens as my jumping off point really, to explore what is this lens, is there a lens? If we're talking about virtual reality, is the audience even aware of that? But first, just to rewind back, I'll tell you a little bit more about me and my company, Limina Immersive. Just one sec, it looks a bit green. I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's in properly. If you think it all looks a bit green, just know it's not meant to look like that. But yes, so Limina, what we do is work with arts venues and cultural institutions in setting up what we call virtual reality theatres. So we create the context for existing audiences of arts venues to experience VR, and that's VR as an art form in its own right rather than as a sort of extension or as a gimmick. We see it having a huge amount of commercial potential but also creative potential as a space. The hype tends to be focused on that commercial potential, especially when you read about it in the press. Sometimes seeing VR, the stereotypes being this kind of futuristic thing, sci-fi, but actually the opportunities artistically for audiences and something that you do as part of an evening out, say, or an afternoon out are vast. So that's what Limina focuses on, and we give venues everything that they need, including content, to create these spaces and times for audiences to experience VR. So this is just a little snapshot, really, of what we do. This is a VR theatre we set up at Cambridge Film Festival. It's sort of the evolution, really, of we started off with the big computers right in the centre, and now actually we use standalone headsets without wires. This is our Limina VR Weekender we did last year in Watershed. You might have heard about it. We screened quite a bit of natural history content there, actually. And then we're doing the VR Weekender, which is our own festival, again this year in London, in Picture House. And this year and next year, we've set up many more festivals, events and venues with what we need to run VR. So I'll kind of come back to how what we do and our approach to VR might be relevant to you, maybe talking about the panel. But for now, I really want to take a step back and look at what makes virtual reality unique. What makes it so special? So let's just strip away all the hype for a minute and all these crazy commercial expectations and just look at what makes it different. I start with the moment I discovered it for myself, which actually, kind of embarrassingly, was in 2014. Doesn't even feel like that long ago, when I thought I invented it. Here's a reconstruction of that moment. When I put my phone in front of my head, had this idea on my lunch break over a sandwich at my desk, and I thought, if I move my head at the same rate as a panning shot of a landscape, and I have it all dark around me, maybe I'll feel like I'm there. And it kind of worked, it did. And I thought, I'm present, I feel something, this is really different. And I said to my colleagues, look, I've just found something. They thought this was absolutely hilarious because they knew, many of them knew, that the Google Cardboard had already been released. Oculus Rift exists, and there'd been a whole VR wave in the 80s and the 90s, and many had even been to VR arcades back then. Needless to say, though, that slight embarrassment, it didn't put me off. They bought me a headset for my birthday, which wasn't soon afterwards. It was one of the little Google Cardboard ones that you could put your phone into. And those first few evenings, when I did, to be honest, mostly roller coaster demos, were quite a revelation. And I suppose that's where I realised what's different. Because, maybe it was because it was sort of early enough that I could see it, I wasn't so into it yet. But we spend most of our lives looking at these things, like almost half of our waking hours are spent looking at glowing rectangles. We situate our lives around them. And that's really weird. When you think about it, that's very strange that we spend so long looking at glowing rectangles. So perhaps there are other ways that we can experience media through glowing rectangles. Doesn't have to be this way, and not everything has to be ported into these boxes. Maybe, for instance, it may become much more normal to be experiencing spaces and people and things through the illusion of presence. So I suppose thinking, why is this significant, maybe it's a bit like the evolution of painting. Maybe we're going to see this as something to an equivalent. Here is an example of a portrait from before the development of perspective. It's an evangelist portrait from the late 700s. And here's an example of painting just after perspective was developed, the tribute money from the early 1400s. And you see here that illusion is used to help convey the story. It gives you this sense, sort of, that you're there. And you can imagine at the time this must have felt pretty groundbreaking. So maybe we're getting better and better at using simulation, not just representation. As humans, you know, we are really great at representation. For instance, a novel written in the third person, for instance, or a theatre production where it's end-on rather than, say, immersive or in the round. We're great at that. But we're also getting even better, especially recently, in this more simulative media. For instance, gaming, augmented reality as well, immersive theatre, other forms of theatre in the round, even things like sort of the way that branding is happening now is becoming much more immersive. So we're getting better and better at this, and there's more tools available. It's becoming democratized. So artistically, it's a great time to be getting involved. So now, just let's pick out a few qualities about what does this quality, with this nature of simulation, give you as a creator or as an audience member. Well, one thing is it can lead to physiological responses. So you can actually get that sense of hairs raising on the back of your neck, sweating, palpitations. For instance, if you were here, you might well get that. You can create a sort of a feeling as if, it's not quite like you're there, but as if you were there, and recreate those feelings. I think of it as a bit like a photocopy of those physiological reactions to if you were there. It's not quite that, but you do get a taste for it. We get feelings of knowing people and being in spaces of people's presence. So, for instance, when somebody smiles at you in virtual reality and they're looking at you in the eye, it is really hard not to smile back. And they could even be an animation. It doesn't have to be 360 video. It has to look lifelike. You can create these sort of pseudo bonds with people because you get that sense that you're there. You feel their presence. You feel their personalities, their charisma. So there's opportunity there. I think a good natural history example of this is David Attenborough in Sky and the Natural History Museum's Hold the World, where you sit there opposite him and you pick out objects that you want to learn more about, say a skull. You pick it up, you put it on the table, and he sits there and looks you in the eye and points at it and tells you about that particular object. And you can point at different parts of it and he'll tell you more about those different parts. So you feel that intimacy, a sort of pseudo bond growing with him, something that psychologists might call a parasocial relationship. If you look that up, it's often used to sort of analyse how teenagers feel about their heartthrobs. And then there's stepping into somebody else's shoes and the effect there. Now, I've only given you 3 different examples. There's many more, but I really wanted to use the stepping into somebody else's shoes. Here, in this case, when we're talking about conservation, talking about natural history, the environment, seeing things from somebody or an animal or even another living thing's perspective, it gives your brain a sort of, I suppose, it's a thought experiment, really. It allows you to practice empathy. And you may well have heard this term for virtual reality, the empathy machine. It's almost got used a bit too much, right, I think, but it does work. You know, there is this opportunity that VR offers to, you could say, commission something that would help people see things from another perspective that they hadn't thought about before. It's not it's not magic. It often requires the audience member to do a lot of the work themselves. This here is a still from my friend Jane Gauntlet's piece, Dancing with Myself. She has epilepsy, and she doesn't know when her epileptic seizures are going to happen, of course. They can happen at any time. So this shows what a normal, evening, weekday dinner out with a friend. And the VR experience puts you in her position where she has a seizure, and she talks before about how she can feel it coming on, and afterwards what it was like, and it actually switches So it goes from you being in her shoes and having an sort of inner monologue to then her talking to you and looking at you in the eye and telling you how it feels to be her and to know that you could have seizures at any moment. And so you've got a bit of this kind of intimacy as well with Jane. And finally, now this is really wrapping up the effect of the other qualities I've talked about, is that when people come out VR, when our audience members come out of the pieces that we've screened to them, they often say, instead of I saw that, more often than not, I did that, or that happened to me. People talk about their experiences as their own, not as somebody else's experience that they've watched. And think about it, what are we if not a collection of our own life experiences? That is how we define ourselves. So, as somebody exhibiting virtual reality, or as a creator of virtual reality, or a commissioner, you have this opportunity to define how people see themselves and to offer them sort of an experience bottled that could then shape their sense of self. So VR has huge potential in terms of efficacy as well. So I suppose that's really where I want to leave you here with this point, and we can explore this a bit more and maybe the practicalities of it in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's great. I'm going to, if you could just save questions, if that's possible, and move on to Tom.
Thank you. So my name's Tom August, and I work at the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. And as you said earlier, I'm an ecologist and programmer. So I'm not a communicator, so forgive me any sort of faux pas I may make. I'm going to talk to you about a project I led last year, creating immersive worlds to talk to young people about the effect of land use change on biodiversity. I really hope that this graph is not a surprise to anyone in this audience. If it is, we need to have words. Biodiversity in the UK is in decline. In fact, biodiversity globally is in decline. And a lot of my research is trying to understand this decline in the UK context. And one of the bits of work that I've been involved in recently is creating this. This is the UK indicator for pollinators. So insects that pollinate flowers, predominantly bees and hoverflies, and they are declining. The reason they're declining and biodiversity pretty much globally is declining, one of the principal drivers is land use change. That's the conversion of land from one form to another, forest to grassland to agriculture, or change in the way it's used, low intensity agriculture into high intensity agriculture, grassland that isn't grazed into grassland that is grazed. We have a big research project at the moment looking at how we can have sustainable intensification of land use, produce more food, at the same time as conserving biodiversity. And one of the things we created, or my colleagues created, is this tool. It's designed for policymakers. It has a pretty map on it. Everyone loves a pretty map. And there's some buttons and stuff. And you can create future scenarios. I want to intensify agriculture. I want to expand agriculture by 30%. And then it visualizes what impact that has, both in terms of the map, what crops are we going to have and where they're going to be, and the impacts on pollution, on biodiversity, on the calories you're producing. CEH, where I work, advertised some internal funding for public communication. And I was interested in communicating this to a younger audience. So this was very much policymakers. So I want to communicate this to a younger audience. I think it's very important to understand that land use change is going to happen, and it's going to affect our biodiversity. I had a huge budget, £2,000. That's staff time and resources. It's also roughly the number of people that I wanted to engage in the project. My philosophy when I do public engagement activities, it needs to be fun first. And selfishly, it needs to be fun for me first. If I don't enjoy it, then my philosophy is that other people probably aren't going to enjoy it either. Also, inevitably, with small budgets like this, I end up doing a lot of stuff in my spare time. So it really needs to be fun first for me. I'm also a strong believer that if someone is enjoying themselves, they're going to learn much more readily than if you're forcing something down their throat. So the audience I wanted to engage with younger people, and I want it to be fun for me. So I cast my mind back to 17-year-old Tom on the right here, and what floated his boat? Computer games in the main, and technology in general. So I designed a project that incorporated, I guess, two immersive or virtual technologies. The first was Minecraft. So Minecraft, if you're one of the 2 people in the UK who haven't heard of it, is a very popular computer game. It's the second highest selling computer game of all time, behind Tetris. It also has the highest number of active players of any computer game currently. So that's Minecraft. And then virtual reality, this was really an opportunity for me to explore this new technology and how it might be used. And the plan was to use that to enable people to explore these Minecraft worlds. So here's a bit of tech about what we did. This is hills and valleys in Minecraft of the real world. This is in Scotland, near Perth. So I'm using a big open data set which tells you where all the hills and valleys are. I then apply to this some habitat layers. So this is me as a programmer. This is where I'm sort of getting all nerdy. I'm getting in some river data sets. It's a big open European river data set. I brought that in. CEH, where I work, has a land cover data set that tells you where all different habitats are. So that comes in. So now we've got agricultural areas and urban areas. I can then use Minecraft vegetation to sort of make things a little bit more realistic, put some flowers and heather up there in the mountains. We also have a data product which has agricultural fields in it. These are the actual crops in the actual fields that you would see in the real world here in Scotland. We can start to put animals in, so cows go in where there's pasture, and we get rabbits in forest. National Forest Inventory is a huge open data set, so where the woodlands are, all the different types of woodlands. They go in there, so we've got coniferous woodlands where there's coniferous woodlands, mixed woodlands where there's mixed woodlands. We've got urban areas. We know there's different types of urban areas. We've got suburban areas and intense urban areas. We can add variation to the building, so it looks a bit more realistic. So now we've got sort of concrete, different types of concrete and different types of wood in the suburban areas. We've also got open street maps. Open street maps have all the roads, so we can put all the roads in. That makes it a bit easier for you to sort of find out where you are, because everyone knows where the roads are in the local areas. Then we've got the crops. So here's the crops as they are today. But we're also interested in how they might be in the future. So we can apply an intensification of agriculture. Now we've just got big fields, and it's mainly wheat and oilseed rape because they produce lots of calories. We can also diversify the crops, and that's much better for wildlife because we've got lots of different stuff going on for lots of wildlife that they can enjoy. So that was a lot of fun. And we can do this for anywhere in the UK. So the sort of programming that we've done in the background means we can just give it a postcode, and we can create this sort of scale model in Minecraft of anywhere in the UK. And we can apply these different scenarios to it. So you can apply intensification of agriculture or diversification of agriculture. And people can explore, where they grew up or where they go to school or where they live. They can explore that area and what it might look like. The VR element we brought in as a mechanism to allow people to explore these worlds. So we went to a country show. That's where we were showing off this technology, these worlds. So you can see in the top right here me looking around, and you can see in the big image a corresponding image of what I can see. So people are going around in this little minecart roller coaster, and they can see the crop here as it is today around this town. You've got the fields on the left-hand side. Look over to the right, and we've got cows grazing in the meadows. And then as they move further through the world, they're moving into an intense agricultural area where I've applied this future scenario where all we care about is producing lots of food. We have these big fields of green wheat and big fields of yellow oilseed rape. And then we can start to have conversations about the impact that this is going to have on biodiversity. So a few things work really well here with the VR. First of all, they're on this track, roller coaster going around, so I can sort of guide them to the areas that I want to show them, and the stories then come out about those areas. Because they're sat there with the VR headset on, they're not going anywhere. So I can stand next to them and talk to them about what it is that they're exploring. I can see where they're looking, because we have a big TV screen like this, so I can see what they see. I can talk to them about what it is they're looking at. And it's also time limited. Because this is sort of one lap of this roller coaster, I don't have any problems having to tear kids away from the computer, which, if you have a kid and they like Minecraft, you can know can be a real problem. We had, this is what it was. This is our little marquee here. We had a lot of success. We had a lot of people interested. Primarily, I think, because we had this Minecraft logo above our tent. So one of the main issues we had with the Minecraft and with the VR as being like a big draw was dealing with all those people. So all these people stood out front here. These are all parents waiting for their kids to come out of the marquee. So that was difficult. So we could have done with more staff to deal with those numbers. We didn't have any problems with power and electricity and the technology side of stuff. That was all plugged in. All my previous engagement stuff's been with things that doesn't require power. So I was a bit nervous about all the technical elements, but that proved not to be too difficult. We got some great responses. This 16-year-old used this expletive to my face. Oh, wow. Anyone who knows a 16-year-old knows it can be difficult to get that sort of a response. So that was really great. That sort of, to me, was fantastic. But was that in a response to the VR and the Minecraft, or was that a response to learning the science? It was probably the former. But there was a quote yesterday evening from James Honeyborn, who was talking about Blue Planet, and he said, if you entertain them, they will come along on your journey. And I think that's exactly what happened here. I set out with that sort of fun first. That really drew people in. And then when they were there, we went on this literal journey, and I was with them as a scientist, talking to them about what they were seeing, about the impact of this land use change on biodiversity, and also about how we coded it. Lots of kids were interested in that too. So it was a fantastic experience. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot about all these technologies. I should say a big thank you to these 2 other chaps who were involved in the code to make all this work and getting all those data sets together. And just a final plea to say that this project is sort of, that £2,000 got spent pretty quickly. It's come to an end, but we're really keen to work with people. So if you think a Minecraft world of where you work would be a cool thing to play with, just let me know and we'd be happy to work with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. It's great. Right then, anybody want to ask a question or say something that maybe chimed with you? Or there's a roving mic at the back.